The goddess bled when the arrow struck her. It wasn't golden light. It wasn't divine fire. It was blood. Red. Mortal. 3 hunters near Berdusk swore they saw the wound with their own eyes, the tear in the flesh, the crimson soaking through the sleeve of a common tunic, the way she stumbled and leaned against a tree, just as any wounded person would. They didn't know her name. They only said she was a tall woman with copper hair, and that the air around her smelled of wet earth after a storm, even though the sky was completely clear. That was the first confirmed report of a wounded god. It wasn't the last. In a matter of days, Candlekeep was drowning in testimonies. Farmers described Tyre walking down a muddy road on the outskirts of El Turel, the blind god of justice, his boots caked in clay, asking for directions like any ordinary traveler. Sailors from Baldur's Gate swore they saw Umberly standing over churning waves, her arms spread wide, her face turned toward an unresponsive sky. Every report arrived on paper that smelled of rain and road dust, the scent of people who had traveled entirely too far just to be believed. The details began to echo across hundreds of miles. Uncanny height. Eyes that caught no light. A sensation that witnesses described with the exact same words, in entirely different languages, without ever having met. It felt like the air was holding its breath. The scent of damp parchment filled the archives as scribes copied testimonies deep into the night. Some accounts contradicted each other. Most didn't. By the 3rd night, I was no longer asking if the stories were true. I was asking a much harder question. What do you call an event where every single god of Faerûn walks upon the exact same soil as the mortals who used to pray to them? The monks of Candlekeep didn't have a word for it. The sages didn't either. Neither did the histories. So, I gave it one. I called it the walking. Gods do not belong in the world beneath them. But they were here, and they kept coming. Then, a messenger arrived from Waterdeep. His boots were coated in a silvery dust that glowed after sunset, a cold luminescence, like ground-up stars. I examined the dust myself. It glowed for 3 nights, then vanished. I don't know what it was. I only know it was real. The messenger claimed to have seen Mystra herself, the Lady of Mysteries, the goddess of magic, the most powerful force in the pantheon, second only to Ao, exhausted and terrified, walking among common travelers in a cold autumn rain.
She wore nothing that shined, just a grey cloak, her hood down, her hair plastered to her face. No one looked at her twice.
I asked him how he knew it was Mystra. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said,
"Because the sky stopped raining wherever she stepped. It didn't stop out of a miracle, it stopped out of fear."
That was the exact moment I understood what the walking truly meant. It wasn't an invasion. It wasn't a war. Not yet. It was an exile. The gods didn't come to Faerûn. They were cast down here. The entity behind this had a name I had heard once before, whispered by a sleepless cleric tending to a child with translucent skin. Au, the god above gods. And he hadn't merely punished the gods. He had abandoned them here. The following night, I heard shouting from the western battlements. A crowd had gathered beneath the walls of Candlekeep. Pilgrims, villagers, merchants, who had abandoned their wagons on the road. Among them stood a hooded figure, motionless, silent. Every nearby torch bent toward it. Not as if pushed by the wind. There was no wind. It was as if the light itself wanted to touch it. Candlekeep's guards raised their weapons. Not a single one advanced. One of them, a veteran I knew personally, A man who had faced down pirates on the Sword Coast and never once backed away. Dropped his sword. It clattered against the cobblestones, and no one moved to pick it up. I went down to the gate, not out of bravery, but because I am a chronicler, and chroniclers go where the stories are, even when the stories might kill them. The figure raised its head. For a single heartbeat, every flame turned pitch black. They didn't go out. They turned black. The light was sucked into itself. The darkness that remained was warm, alive. Then, I saw the eyes. They weren't hollow voids like Gilgame's. They were full, fuller than any human eye could possibly contain. Inside them were realms that no longer existed. Stars that had burned out before Faerûn was even born. Silences that spanned across eons. They were eyes older than kingdoms. I looked into them for a second, maybe less. It was enough. The stranger didn't speak. They simply turned and walked north toward the Sunset Mountains. The torches slowly returned, one by one, as if asking for permission. The crowd dispersed in dead silence. No one ran. Running would have meant admitting that what they had just seen was real. I returned to my quarters and tried to write. My right hand wouldn't move. It wasn't paralyzed. It had just forgotten how. I had to relearn, letter by letter, over the course of 3 days. I never told anyone at Candlekeep about this. I'm telling you now because someone needs to know the cost of looking at a god, not in prayer, not in a dream, but in flesh and blood, standing in the same rain, breathing the very same air. A part of you forgets how to be mortal, and it never entirely relearns. The hooded figure didn't follow me. No god chased me that night. But there are pursuits that don't require movement. Ever since then, I can't look at a flame without feeling like it's leaning towards something I cannot see. Every campfire, every candle, every hearth, they all bend slightly, as if obeying a gravity that doesn't include me. I understood at that gate that gods do not belong in the world beneath them. But I also understood something far worse. They know it too. Every single one of them. And a god who knows they shouldn't be here is a god who will do absolutely anything to get back. The reports can no longer be ignored. They aren't just reports anymore. They are the evidence of an ongoing catastrophe. What started with a sleepless cleric and a child with translucent skin has become something no archive in Candlekeep has ever documented. The gods are among us, and they are desperate. Ao didn't just evict the gods from their thrones. He hurled them down, and Faerûn is where they landed. Next week, I will document the first death among the fallen powers. Her name was Mystra. She was the goddess of magic, the lady of mysteries, the guardian of the weave, the force that sustained every single spell ever cast in Faerûn. And she died, trying to climb her way back home. The battle that killed her leveled an entire fortress. The shockwaves rippled through the weave like earthquakes, tearing through a spider web. Everywhere magic existed, something broke, and it remains broken to this day. I will tell that story in full detail. Someone has to. This has been a transmission from the Archive of the Impossible.
The Impossible Archive is open. New episodes every week. Subscribe before the next entry disappears.